Formula One heads to Budapest, Hungary this weekend, and we have some predictions to make. The roster across the drivers looks a little bit different, with Daniel Ricciardo making his return to the sport, replacing Nick de Vries. But that won't stop us from making our predictions for what's going to happen this weekend in Hungary. Let's jump on into it. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another predictions video. After a couple of weeks in a row, we had a week off to think about what was coming next, and Daniel Ricciardo makes his way back onto the grid, replacing Nick de Vries at AlphaTauri. And so we are going to be making an additional prediction this week, along with our normal regular predictions on where we think and how we think Daniel is going to do in Hungary in his first race back in Formula One since leaving at the end of last season. But if you are new here, these are the predictions we'd like to make. Biggest positive surprise, biggest disappointment, our qualifying results, our race results, and it is our channel. We are big Haas fans here, so we also make a Haas prediction of the race weekend. And like I mentioned, we are also going to be making a how Daniel does in Hungary this weekend. But we're going to go ahead and jump straight into it with our first prediction, our biggest positive surprise. And my biggest positive surprise is Fernando Alonso. It has been more than a few weeks at this point that we've seen a truly impressive week out of Aston Martin, specifically Fernando Alonso. And so I think after a Silverstone, which Aston Martin just did not look like it suited it very well, I think heading to Hungary, which is about the antithesis you can get to Silverstone, is going to be an opportunity for Fernando Alonso to reestablish himself near the top of the sport. It's been a while since he's been on a podium at this point, and so I think that heading to Hungary, Aston Martin could do well, and I'm predicting that Fernando Alonso is going to re-enter the scene with a strong weekend in Hungary. And if this is the first predictions video you've seen, I also like to give my community a piece of the pie as well over on my Discord, as well as on live streams here on YouTube. I give them an opportunity to have their voice be heard, and they this week have gone for Mercedes as their biggest positive surprise. Mercedes has been a very upper mid field team the last few race weekends, nothing too high, nothing too low, but they think for some reason that Mercedes is just going to come in and be on the pace from the jump. They definitely seem to have taken a step forward in terms of race pace last week at Silverstone, but their qualifying pace seemed to have fallen off a little bit. We saw George Russell take a surprise pole here last season, and so they think that Mercedes is going to come in and have a lovely weekend in Hungary. Moving on now to our biggest disappointment of the Hungarian Grand Prix race weekend, and my chat and I are on the same page when it comes to who we think is going to be our biggest disappointment. And we have gone for, unfortunately, Williams. I made this prediction last week as well at Silverstone, and they absolutely and uncategorically proved me wrong with a very solid performance, but it also was a result from a track that I think suits the Williams car a lot more. And so I think heading to Hungary now with a lot of low to medium speed corners instead of the high speed corners of Silverstone, I think the Williams might struggle a little bit. Once again, I'm very welcome to be proved wrong here. I would love nothing more to see a cheeky little Alex Albon points, or maybe even a Logan Sargent points at the end of the weekend. But unfortunately, I think Williams is just going to struggle a little bit on this circuit. It's just a very different circuit than what we've seen the last couple of rounds in Austria and the British Grand Prix. And so unfortunately, we all seem to agree, but Williams, unfortunately, I think you might have a bit of a long weekend. We move forward now to qualifying for Hungary, and we always predict our top three, and my qualifying predictions go as thus. I am predicting I'm going to go top down like we did last week, because the top is never going to be a surprise. I've said it every single predictions video, I think for the last 4 in a row. But Max Verstappen is my prediction for pole position until someone can prove me wrong. Lando Norris almost pulled it off last week, but until someone can actually prove me wrong, Max Verstappen is going to be sharpied into my top line until someone else can take it from him. So Max Verstappen, I have finishing on pole for qualifying. In P2, had a very good qualifying last season, and in Hungary, I have gone for a Scuderia, Carlos Sainz. I've gone for Carlos Sainz. He had a very surprisingly good result in qualifying last year before Ferrari's strategy ultimately kind of came back to bite them in the butt a little bit. But at the same time, I think Carlos has been driving unbelievably well. And while he may have been left out to dry a little bit last week in Silverstone, I think in terms of qualifying, I think he has what it takes and he's been driving exceptionally well. and I think he puts it P2 in Hungary. And then rounding out my top three, he's my biggest positive surprise. Fernando Alonso returns near the top of the grid. I think he's going to come out and perform very well around Hungary and in qualifying. I think he's going to be itching to take advantage of a slower speed circuit and an Aston Martin that is very downforcey to try and return to the top of the grid. And I think Fernando Alonso is going to round out my predictions for the top three of qualifying. And then as for my community, they have gone for a little bit of a different tact here. They have also gone for a Max Verstappen pole position. I don't think anyone's going to blame us for that one. But in P2, they have gone for one George Russell. George Russell, their prediction for P2. I think George has had a bit of a down few weeks and nothing too spectacular, but they think that George is due for a good result. He took pole last year in Hungary, so maybe this is the weekend that George reasserts himself near the top as well. So who knows? A George Russell P2 predicted by them. And then in P3 for them, a bit more of a believers in what they saw in Silverstone, a Lando Norris P3 for them. It is going to be fascinating to see what McLaren can do this weekend, following up a wonderful weekend back home in the British Grand Prix. It's going to be an exciting qualifying, and while it may not be the most exciting race, I think it's going to be fascinating to see on a more high level what happens in Hungary this weekend. We move now to the race podium predictions. This is the one that always gets people up out of their seats, and we're going to start top down. Once again, for me, I hate to have to say this every single predictions video, but until he proves me wrong, Max Verstappen is going to win Hungary. I hate saying it every week, but I need to get these points banked in a little bit. I try and go a little bit different here and there elsewhere, but until someone else can prove that they can win a race this year, Max Verstappen is going to win in my books and my predictions. But it gets even more fun as we move down the order to P2. I have Fernando Alonso back on the podium again in Hungary. It's been quite a while since we've seen Alonso on the podium, and I think Hungary could be the weekend to do it once again. I think it's going to be an exciting race, and I can't wait to see what happens. And then rounding out my podium predictions, we have Lewis Hamilton. Lewis made his way through the field last year, ended up on the podium in Hungary as well, and I think we could see it again this year. I think Lewis has been driving very, very well in a W14 that I don't think is still quite up to snuff with what they're used to, but I think Lewis has been driving very well, and I think with a full weekend of data gathering and learning, and then a whole week off to kind of wrap their head around what they saw in Silverstone, I think the W14 may take a step forward as they head to Hungary and Budapest this weekend. So there it is. That's my podium. A Max Verstappen, followed by Fernando Alonso, followed by and rounding out with a Lewis Hamilton. Well, we return to a popular podium so far this season. It could be an exciting one. I hope we have some twists and turns along the way. And then as for my community, they have also gone for a very bold prediction. They have gone with, we'll start P3 down on this one. Finishing third step of the podium, they have gone for George Russell. They think that George is going to have a very good qualifying and parlay that into a podium finish around Hungary. I think that's none too surprising, especially at a place like Hungary. In P2, they have Lando Norris, thinking Norris is going to kind of continue that momentum out of England into Budapest and kind of finish on the podium once again. But the real kicker is who they have finishing on the top step. They have predicted a Lewis Hamilton win in Hungary for Lewis's first win in a very long time, since Jeddah 2021, I believe. They predict Lewis Hamilton to win, which I did follow up afterwards, and they're predicting a Max Verstappen DNF around Hungary. For one, I think everyone would get pretty excited about the prospect of someone other than Max winning, but that is their predictions. A Hamilton, Norris, Russell podium. It would be a wonderful sight to see anyone but Max on the top step. But will it happen? Yeah, time will tell. We move now to our personal fandom here on this channel, our Haas prediction for the race weekend. We'll keep this one pretty brief. The Haas car has been very up and down, more down than up, it would seem, at certain points this year. And so for my predictions for Haas in Hungary, I have gone for a 2 cars into Q2. I have to believe that Kevin Magnussen will make it out of Q1 soon. I know he had a lot of engine troubles in both quali and the race around Silverstone, but Nico Hülkenberg has been very good in qualifying, routinely reaching Q3 more times than not almost at this point. And Kevin Magnussen has to pick it up at some point. I have to believe that he's going to come in and do pretty well, I think, kind of coming off of almost effectively a double DNF. In Silverstone, I think he comes in, makes it into Q2, but I think that's kind of as far as this car can go. It'll be interesting to see with the traffic and the timing and the weather and all that stuff. And I think at the end of the day, I think we'll settle for and take a double Q2 appearance. We'll take those every single day of the week. And I think when it comes to the race itself, I'm predicting 1 car finish in the top 14. I really am not predicting points, but 1 in the top 14, but probably no points is probably my last prediction for Haas. And as for my community, they actually see, and they are taking on the role of Haas believers, because my expectations have been tempered after some pretty rough results the last few weeks, but they actually are predicting a very solid weekend for Haas. They think they're going to have a Q3 appearance for Nico Hülkenberg and a double points finish for Haas, a P7 and P10 specifically. I would be over the moon and back if Haas manages a double points finish in Hungary. I'll leave the hopium and the copium for them. I'm just going to be over here enjoying every single second of it if that does come true. But there it is. Those are our Haas predictions for the race weekend. And we have one more special prediction coming up right now. And then finally, he makes his return onto the Formula One grid in the AlphaTauri, our Daniel Ricciardo prediction for this weekend. It's going to be his first time back on the grid, and I think it could be a bit of an interesting follow. I think all eyes are going to be on Daniel here as he, ultimately replaces Nick DeVries at AlphaTauri, and so it's going to be very interesting to see how he manages to cope with the pressure and jumping into a car he may not have gotten that much experience in. Supposedly he's performing very well behind the scenes, but until we see him on track, it's all unknown, which is why we are here to make our Daniel Ricciardo prediction. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think the AlphaTauri is one of, if not the worst car on the grid. Daniel can put in some very over-the-top, overperforming results, and so I'm predicting a Q2 appearance for Daniel Ricciardo. I don't know if that car is good enough to get into Q3 in its current form, but I do think Daniel will be eager and focused to come in with a good result in quali. But I do think he finishes outside the points. I mean, Yuki has been in this car for a few years now, and even he is struggling to get near the points, often finishing just outside, if not lower. So unfortunately, I'm predicting no points for Daniel, but I do think he'll finish in the top 14. I think he'll come out and put in a very respectable performance in the AlphaTauri, but no points for Daniel, and a Q2 appearance to go along with it. And I think we'll have to wait a few rounds before we see what Daniel really has. And then as for the community, they think that he also is going to get a bit of a struggle as well. They do predict him to outqualify Yuki. And they do think that he's going to finish in the top 12, but it's going to be really iffy for points. I mean, again, this AlphaTauri is not good, and so it's going to be interesting to see at least. I hope Daniel does well. It would be exciting to see, but at the same time, the AlphaTauri is not great, and Daniel might be good, but is he good enough? Only time will tell. There it is, our predictions for the Hungarian Grand Prix this weekend. What do you guys think is going to happen? Let me know down in the comments below, and be on the lookout post-race for what happens in my post-race review and recap of these predictions and what happened over the whole weekend. I can't wait to see what this weekend has in store. The week off was nice, but at the same time, I'm ready to see cars go around funny shaped circles again. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss that recap and any other videos I upload to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss a single upload, and I'll be back again after the weekend is over to talk about what happened. But for now, I think that'll do it for me here, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.